it's not about effort, it's not about discipline, and it's not about whether you're capable. It's about how you move from where you are to the next level with intention. And so that's what I call a loop. Action builds confidence, confidence creates clarity, and clarity informs better action. Here's what happens when you don't see that. You slow yourself down without realizing it. Not because you're incapable, but because you're expecting things to show up out of order. Hello, welcome to the Shattered Mindset Podcast, wisdom from life's turning points and defining moments. I'm your host, Melvin Larry. At this stage of your life, you're not just trying to figure out if you can do it. You've already proven that. You've built things, navigated pressure, made decisions without having all the answers, and kept moving anyway. So now the conversation shifts. It's not about effort, it's not about discipline, and it's not about whether you're capable. It's about how you move from where you are to the next level with intention. Because when you've already developed capacity, the challenge isn't starting, it's refining. It's tightening things up. It's understanding what actually creates forward movement at a higher level. And the more I started paying attention to that, not just what I was doing, but how things were unfolding, I began to notice something. There's patterns to all of this, not something you map out in advance, not something that shows up clean and predictable, but something that's been happening, whether you've been calling it that or not. And once I saw it, I couldn't ignore it. A lot of what's been taught about growth is just really out of sequence, not useless, just incomplete. Because what you've probably heard is get clear, then act, build confidence, then move. But that's not how it plays out. Real life kind of looks a little bit different. All right. You step into something without full clarity, you make a move without full confidence. And somewhere in the middle of that, something starts to build. Not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily. You begin to feel more capable, more steady, more aware of what you're doing. That's confidence. Then clarity starts to show up. You begin to see what's working, what's not, what needs to adjust. And now the next move you make is different, more intentional, more dialed in, more effective. All right. That's what I call a loop. Action builds confidence, confidence creates clarity, and clarity informs better action. And once you see that, you stop trying to operate outside of it. You start working with it. If you don't recognize that sequence, you can misread what's happening. You hit a moment where you don't feel confident and assume something's missing, when really you're just early in the cycle. You hit a moment where things aren't clear and think you need to pause, when clarity is actually on the other side of your next move. Here's what happens when you don't see that. You slow yourself down without realizing it, not because you're incapable, but because you're expecting things to show up out of order. Now, bring that into your work, your business, your career. You're not being told what to do, you're making calls, and a lot of those calls don't come with full clarity. You don't always have all the information, and you don't always know how it's going to play out, but you still have to move. So here's what happens. You step into something new, a direction, a strategy, an opportunity, and you don't feel fully confident yet. Not because you're not capable, but because you haven't been there before. Now, if you're operating outside the loop, you hesitate. You try to figure everything out first. You try to eliminate every unknown. You try to build confidence before you move. And that's where things slow down because you're trying to force clarity ahead of action. Now, what's the difference when someone understands this? They step in, not blindly or recklessly, but with the understanding that they'll see more in motion than they ever will standing still. So they move. And once they move, something starts to happen. They get feedback, real feedback, not assumptions or projections, but actual response, actual experience. And from that, confidence starts to build because now they're interacting with reality. Then clarity shows up, not all at once, but in pieces. What's working, what's not, what needs to shift, where to lean in, where to pull back. And now the next decision is stronger, more informed, more precise. That's the loop showing up again. And what separates people isn't ability, it's how they interpret the early stages. Because in the beginning, before confidence builds and before clarity shows up, it can feel uncertain. If you misread the moment, you pause. If you understand it, you proceed. And that's a different level of movement for you. Now, think about how many times you've already done this. You stepped into something without being fully sure and figured it out along the way. That wasn't luck, that was this loop working in real time. Once you recognize that, you stop second guessing that early phase. You don't label it as lack, you recognize it as the beginning of the process. And when you see it that way, you move differently, more decisively, not because you know everything, but because you understand how knowing develops. And that's where things start to accelerate because now you're not waiting to feel ready, you're stepping into it, knowing that readiness builds through engagement. Now, let's take this out of business for a minute and bring it into how you see yourself, because this is where it kind of gets a little bit deeper. There are moments where it's not about strategy, it's about identity, who you believe you are while you're in the middle of becoming someone else. And that's where hesitation shows up, not because you don't know what to do, but because you're adjusting to who you're becoming while you do it. Listen, this loop again shows up because you're taking action. You step into something that stretches you. You speak up where you would have stayed quiet. You make a decision you would have delayed. And in that moment, you feel it. You're not fully settled, not fully comfortable, and you still moved anyway. And from the movement, something begins to shift inside you. You start to see yourself differently, not because you told yourself something, but because you experienced yourself actually doing something. That's where confidence builds, not from affirmations, but from evidence. Nothing wrong with affirmations, but evidence. Okay. Then clarity follows you. You start to recognize, hey, look, that's how I move now. That's how I respond now. And once that clarity shows up, your next action reflects it. You don't hesitate the same way. You don't second guess the same way because you've seen yourself operate at that level. You've given yourself some proof of evidence, social proof, if you want to call it, whatever. You've done it before. All right. All right. And that's a part of the loop. It's just you've done it before. Action, clarity, confidence. Now, here's why this matters. There's a space between action and identity catching up. And if you don't understand that space, you can pull back. You can shrink it. You can shrink into it. You can retreat to what's familiar. But when you understand the loop, you stay with it. You let the confidence build, you let the clarity form, and your next move comes from that new place. Growth at this level isn't about doing more, it's about becoming precise in how you move. And that precision comes from repetition inside the loop. Action, confidence, clarity, and then action again. Each time you move through it, You're not just improving what you do, you're reinforcing who you are. And over time, that builds something deeper. You stop asking, am I ready? And start operating from, I know how to build readiness. Now, let's take this into leadership. It shows up in how you lead, how you communicate, how you respond to people around you. At this level, you're influencing others. Your decisions affect your family, your team, and people watching how you move. And there are moments where you don't have full clarity, but people are still looking at you. Look, if you believe clarity has to come first, it causes you to hesitate and causes you to hold back. You wait longer than you should, and uncertainty starts to spread again. But when you understand the loop, you know, look, not with arrogance, not pretending to know everything, but with the understanding that clarity sharpens as you move forward. So you communicate. Here's the direction. We'll adjust as we go. We'll learn as we move. And so you communicate it to people that way. And what happens? Confidence builds, not just in you, but in the people around you. I mean, listen, you ever been in a situation where you were wanting to do something and you just didn't have the confidence? Let me just give you a story of when I was a kid growing up. I was a little kid and we would go through the neighborhood and there was this ditch and all the boys would just we'd run and they jump the ditch and I kind of go around it because I didn't want to fall in the ditch. I didn't have the confidence. All right. So I just go around. All right. And all the time I had to catch up because they'd already jumped the ditch. So one day we're running, and we're just running pretty fast. And without thinking, without hesitation, I jumped the ditch. Well, guess what I did after that? I had the confidence and I was clear. I saw the ditch differently. All right. It was probably just not much more than a puddle. All right. When I look back on it. All right. Confidence builds not just in you, but people around you when you do other things. And I know that was about me, but it builds other people around you because people don't just respond to certainty, they respond to movement with intention, movement with intention. And as things unfold, clarity shows up for everyone. What's working? What needs to shift? Where to double down? All of that starts to show up for everybody. And now your next move as a leader is tighter. That's the loop extending beyond you. Okay. So let's bring it into relationships. Look, sometimes you don't get clarity before the conversation. You might want to have it all figured out, but you just got to jump into those conversations sometime. You get into it, and that's really where things start to take shape. You say something, they respond. Something shifts, and now you're seeing it differently than you did before you started. But that's where clarity comes from. If you're listening, and if you wait until everything feels clear before you engage, you slow down what needs to happen. I mean, like me, sometimes I have the conversation way before with myself before the conversation ever starts. And I may not be right about it because I haven't gotten perspective on it. But when you understand the loop, you step into it, you speak, you listen, you adjust. And in that exchange, something becomes clearer, not just for you, but for the other person. And from that clarity, the next interaction becomes stronger, more direct, more honest. Over time, people experience you different. There's a steadiness to how you move, a presence, and that presence builds trust, not just in what you say, but in how you operate. And that compounds because now you're not just growing, you're elevating the environment around you. And that's influence. That's what John C. Maxwell says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Now let's bring that back together. Okay. What we've been talking about isn't something new you need to learn. It's something you've already been doing. Okay. You've been moving before you felt ready. You've been figuring things out in the middle of it. You've been building confidence through experience and gaining clarity through engagement. That's not random. That's just a pattern. It's a sequence. And once you recognize it, you stop misreading your own progress. You stop waiting for things that are designed to show up after you move, and you start using the process intentionally. So as you move forward, pay attention to the sequence, not just what you're doing, but how it's unfolding. Where are you waiting for confidence? Where are you waiting for clarity? When your next level is sitting on the other side of movement. I say sometimes that, in order to get to something, you have to go through something, because there's no to without through. And through means movement. Okay. So, look, we'll go deeper into how to apply this and how to recognize where you are in the loop. But for now, just start seeing it. Just start seeing it clearly, the clarity, confidence loop. Because once you see it, you don't move the same way again. So until the next time, keep adapting, keep evolving, and keep reaching for those higher horizons. I'll see you the next time on the Shattered Mindset podcast. Take care, take charge. God bless.